Hey everybody, it is Sunday afternoon and I just got finished doing some maintenance here on my native tank, so I thought we would have a little chat about it. I've been giving it some thought and I still don't know what I want to do with this tank, but we'll get to that. As far as the maintenance, I didn't do anything amazing. I just got in there and did a really big water change. I drained about, I don't know, I'd say more than 50% of the water. I took the water down to about halfway down the height of the tank. And of course, with all that stuff in the bottom, all those rocks and branches and substrate and everything, that displaces an awful lot of water. So running it down to 50% is much more than 50% of the water coming out of there. So I did a really significant water change, and I wiped down the glass while I was in there. And that is it. I didn't mess with the filter. I didn't really do anything. So I still don't really know what I want to do with this. I've gone through so many different ideas, different stuff pops in my mind. I don't want to talk too much about it because I don't know if I really want to do any of those things. And whatever I do, I either A, want it to be a surprise, or B, don't want to talk a bunch of stuff about something that never comes to fruition if I never do it. So I will say, just to give you an idea of the wide gamut of ideas that have been flowing through my head, I actually have been entertaining the idea over the last couple of days of putting discus in this tank. Not necessarily as is, but converting this tank over into a discus tank, which I've never even really been interested in doing my entire time keeping fish. I guess my recent success keeping that Bolivian ram so far has got me rethinking about these so-called super sensitive fish that I never thought I'd be able to keep. Having said that, I'm really not interested in keeping discus. I don't know whether there's any truth to the idea that they're super sensitive or not. I'm going to assume it probably is. Either way, I generally don't think that my tank setup is going to be conducive for discus, nor do I want to shell out the kind of money that would be involved in setting up a tank with some discus. So I feel like I can talk about that as just to give you an idea of how wide-ranging and sort of almost silly at times my ideas for this tank have been. Mostly it involves staying, if not as native as it is, something real similar. It would be, it's not going to be anything radically different than what it is now. I've got some ideas on scape, how I'd like to redo it. I don't have anything solid that I've got, I want to put some different woodwork in there. I've got an idea of what I want to do with a nice piece of tree stump or something, although I've got a sort of very specific idea in mind what I want to do with the tree stump, so it's going to have to be a really specific tree stump. I am going out on the boat this afternoon, as I do most afternoons, so I will probably be a little more attuned to looking around for woodwork today than I have been as of late, because honestly I just really have not been thinking about this tank very much at all. I don't know. I'm not really bored with the tank. It's not that I dislike it. I really enjoy it a lot. As I was standing here watching it, looking at it while I was doing the water change, it's a beautiful tank. I love the way I've got it set up. I think my plants are doing really well and growing nicely. I never thought the Anubias would take in there, but you can see all the new root growth I've got. Nice new leaves coming out on it. So it does get brutalized. I do have that tilapia in there, eats a lot. You can see even that Java fern, which my understanding is that that's some pretty tough stuff and most fish don't chew on it. But you can see it looks like I've got a deer problem inside my aquarium. It looks like somebody's been in there munching on the leaves, and they have. It's that spotted tilapia down there. And I've also got that Chinese algae eater in here. And I've got my pleco in here. There's the profile of the pleco. He's hanging upside down on the rock. One of the things I did want to point out in here, for those of you who wonder whether it really is a requirement to have wood in your tank with your pleco, I always recommend it. There are some species where it's more important than others. But if you've got any kind of pleco, even if it's just a rubber lip, I would have at least some kind of natural wood in your tank. And you can see how this piece of wood is being scraped away to nothing. That was a whole branch when it went in there. I mean, you can see this end of it still looks more like a branch, whereas this end of it, it looks like somebody's been in there working on it a little bit here and a little bit there with sandpaper or a file or a rasp or something. And that is probably a little bit of the Chinese algae eater, but mostly it is that gold spot pleco I have in here. It might even be a little bit of the white suckerfish I have in this tank too. If you look at this fish, it's all the way down on the bottom, kind of laying low, hiding under everybody. You see that downward facing mouth on it. They are bottom feeders. I do see them around sort of scratching and scraping on the log. I just don't really know what they have in the way of teeth. They might be just sort of scraping algae off of it and not really scouring the wood the way the plecos do. But that scraping and scouring is good evidence that the fact that the pleco is removing wood. It's actually eating the wood. And they do that to get the extra fiber in their diet. They use the wood to help grind up the other food they eat in much the same way a lot of birds will have a gizzard and they'll eat little bits of gravel and stone, and that sort of creates a little grinding chamber that helps to grind up the tough food they eat. Well, the plecos do the same thing, but they just use the wood fiber for that process. And, of course, it helps just like any kind of insoluble fiber. It helps move things along through the old pipes. So having wood in your tank is important if you've got plecos. Again, I know it's more important for some species than it is others. I just use it as a rule of thumb. If you've got any kind of pleco, make sure you've got at least got a little bit of natural wood in your tank. Other than that, I didn't really notice anything different. My tilapia has still, got this whole corner sort of cordoned off as its own. If the pleco comes down into this end of the tank, the tilapia chases it away. So I left it. There's the Chinese algae eater right there. I left it alone. I didn't go ahead and spread the gravel back around. I just felt like I would have been being kind of a jerk to do that. It doesn't bother me that you can see the egg crate plastic I've got in the back. The reason I have that egg crate plastic in the back is you can see the size of these rocks I have. I mean, that rock right there, you're not picking this thing up with one hand. That is a big rock. And it's all real, natural rock that I've collected myself and lugged out of the stream and, brought up to the house. This is another one that is probably a 30 or 40 pound rock all by itself. Well, I don't want that much rock, especially standing upright with potentially a point, right down there on the glass on the bottom of my aquarium, nor do I want it sliding around and shifting out of position and so on and so forth. So before I ever put substrate in, I put all the rocks in the tank and get the whole hardscape set up and sort of immovable, and then I put the rock, gravel, all this stuff around it. That way, not only is the big rocks not touching the glass, but it won't shift. If you put the rocks in after the gravel is in there, and you get a fish like this that goes in there and starts digging and shifting and moving the gravel around, suddenly, you got this rock that shifts and falls and bangs against the back of the aquarium, and you don't want that. So you get everything in there, you get it all set up and rock solid, you make sure you give it a little shake and shimmy and make sure it's good and stationary and not really going to go anywhere if a fish bangs into it. You don't want anything, teetering or precariously balanced. You want it in there good and solid. And then you put your substrate in and your gravel in behind that, and that way it's in there good and solid, and it's not going to shift if the substrate gets moved around. So when I get in there to redo it, if I've got any large rocks and I want to redo the scape in any significant way, which I do, then that's going to provide a little bit of a challenge. I'm going to have to sort of move everything out, move all the gravel out of the way to get to the where I'm down to the plastic again, reposition my rocks, so on and so forth, go through that whole process again, and then move all the gravel back down. Or what I'd honestly like to do, I'd really like to put the black gravel in here. I think that looks so much better when you look at a tank that's got the dark substrate in it, and most of my tanks do, although the bottom of this one is covered with pleco poo. But the dark substrate looks so much better, and the vast majority of my tanks have the dark substrate in there. I put this in just because I thought it would look more natural to the background around here. But honestly, it kind of doesn't. It kind of just looks like an artificial aquarium gravel that fish are swimming around in. So maybe we'll do something about that. I don't know. But again, I've been giving it some thought, so maybe we'll make some progress on this tank. If I do collect up any of the rosy side dace, I'm going to really need to get on that soon. I think the day after tomorrow is the 1st of October, believe it or not. And so if I'm going to do any, putting the minnow trap out kind of stuff, then I really probably need to get on that at some point here in the very near future. So we'll see what happens. We'll see how it all works out. But I don't know. Like I said, just, hang in there. We'll do something with this tank at some point. So, meantime, make sure you're subscribed. That way you won't miss anything I got coming up on this tank or any of the other ones. You never know what it's going to be with me. So, thanks again for watching. Don't forget this one is my 125-gallon native tank for the moment and into the future. So, thanks for watching. I'll see you real soon in the next one.